Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in, as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49, and it begins right now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in. Sorry about my camera here. Hopefully, we'll be able to get it focused pretty quickly as we go along throughout the show here. But I am Michael Carnahan, Money Mike, joining in here on the return of the American Idiots. We had a little bit of a hiatus, so to speak, scheduling, and of course, I started a new job, so I've been dealing with getting adjusted to that. So definitely happy to be back, happy to be talking politics, even though some of the things we're going to talk about tonight frankly shocked me, especially the first topic we have going on. But let's go ahead and bring him in. The Manic Hispanic. Manny Hispanic, how are you doing this week?
Doing good. It's good to be back home. It's good to be coming to the crowd, even though it's a day late. Feels like a regular time now that I've got my regular background.
Right. It's so excited to see the background.
The hotel life is not a fun thing.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's one of those things that, you got to do what you got to do, but
right.
Sometimes you're nothing like being at home, but
right.
Let's go ahead and get into things here. Yesterday, I awoke to the news, and I think I sent it over to you, so you may have as well, to the news that we lost the former Secretary of State, Colin Powell, and we actually have a story here on this one from MSNBC on his life.
Bring in right now presidential historian, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian John Meacham. John, Colin Powell, General Powell, there's so much that can be said for him this morning. He was an historic figure. He was a trailblazer. He was an American soldier that represented his country proudly in uniform for decades. And I think most importantly, in 2021, he has shown courage that so many in his former party have not, in continuing to be a champion, whether in uniform or whether out of uniform, retired, being a champion for Western democracy and Western values.
Absolutely. General Powell, I think, represents the best of what the country can be. His trajectory, based on merit, based on skill, something he wrote about, something he talked about. He titled his memoir American Journey, and in many ways his capacities to rise, to shape history, represent the best of what we should be. And he saw those possibilities, the country that had made his life possible, fading in these recent years. The other, remember, a great moment. He picked his shots. One thing about Colin Powell is he applied the Powell doctrine not just in the first Gulf War, but in his own expenditure of political capital. When you think about it, so he would pick moments to say something. He wasn't always out there. He wasn't ubiquitous, so that when he said something, it really resonated. And there was that moment, I believe it was when he endorsed Senator Obama in 2008. And he said that great moment where, John McCain says, no, he's not a Muslim. of Obama in the town hall, a moment for which Senator McCain is rightly praised. General Powell said, "What if he was? What if he were? What difference does it make?" And it was I remember almost a physical feeling of hearing a man who served in uniform, who, as you say, was Caspar Weinberger's military aide during the Cold War, was President Reagan's last national security advisor. He was the one who gave the last great briefing to Ronald Reagan on January 20th, 1989. The world is quiet today, Mr. President, not least because of what President Reagan had done. He leaves Washington. He goes down to Atlanta. He was on his way to still had a few more steps in the military ranks. And actually, it was Dick Cheney and who suggested and helped push for George H.W. Bush to bring Powell back to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. That was the beginning of a kind of George Marshall-like career, because he was, in many ways, the architect of the first Gulf War victory, which is one of the great examples of how we should project force. And he did that. And then, of course, as Secretary of State. So there's this, and just to put it in a plain vernacular, he's a black guy who's doing it. And he used to say that privately. It's like, I'm a black guy in America doing this. And that's a great thing about America. But he would also say it shouldn't be that notable. It shouldn't be that unusual. And I think that not least because of his remarkable contributions to the country, our understanding of opportunity has, in fact, shifted forever.
He certainly has had an extraordinary impact on the United States over the past 30, 40 years for so many different reasons. And John is right. General Powell would choose his spots when he would speak out. One of those times came after January the 6th. We had him on the show, and he was quite critical of what he saw on January the 6th, wondering where the National Guard was, wondering where police officers were, wondering where security was on that day, but spoke out strongly against January the 6th and what he saw and the slow reaction to it. Let's bring in Rich. Hey, thanks so much.
So, Manny, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Colin as a person. What do you believe the lasting legacy of Colin Powell will be? Do you believe it'll be the Reagan and both Bush presidency Colin Powell, where he stood, for the most part behind the current president? Or do you believe it'll be what we have in these later years where, a lot of Republicans have chosen to not necessarily disparage him, but they've kind of found themselves at odds in a lot of cases. You heard about the January 6th thing in that video. You heard about, obviously Donald Trump famously was not a fan of Colin Powell and vice versa. What do you think the lasting legacy of Colin Powell will be in our country?
I think the lasting legacy is really going to depend on the age that you are. For a lot of people, they're going to remember him as the one that stood behind all your former presidents. For people my age, what sticks out to me more than anything is like they said, he was the general that went in there and cleared house after 9/11. That is going to be a very lasting impression for people of my age. For the younger people that have just, started voting in the last few elections, the man that stood behind Obama will probably come to the forefront, and a lot of the younger people are going to remember him either fondly or negatively, based on his alliance with the Democratic Party.
Okay.
So it's really going to depend on the age of the people as to how he's remembered. because those younger people will outlive us. That is probably what's going to be spread.
Right. Right, absolutely. They said some interesting things there for me. They talked about obviously how he wanted to downplay the fact that he was able to accomplish all these major accomplishments, even though he was a black man. And one thing that stood out to me that I didn't actually know, and maybe this is because maybe it is a well-known fact in political regimes, but I didn't know that he made that comment past what McCain said about then Senator Obama. Saying, "What if he is?" And that made me.
Yeah, I'd never heard that either. But it does bring up a good point. I mean, being of any other kind of faith, does it really make a difference?
Right, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I know at that point we were 7 years removed from 9/11, but even then, I mean, he's right. What if he was? What's it matter as long as the guy, was always keeping America, and in his forefront of his policies and what have you. Another thing I want to ask you about, obviously, through multiple presidential elections, it was always, speculated. Would Colin Powell run? Would Colin Powell, become the first African American president? Obviously, we know that we've had Obama since then, but what do you think about Colin Powell as the potential president? Do you think that he was wise in staying out of that kind of mudslinging contest, or do you think do you kind of like me? I kind of wish he would have. I kind of wish he would have ran for president because I think he would have been an amazing commander in chief.
When it comes to stuff like that, you don't really know what keeps or pushes people to make those kind of decisions.
Right.
When you start going into politics, all of your closet doors get open, whether there's anything in there or not. And for some people, that's more intrusive than they want to be.
Right.
So for me to say, I wish he would have ran or he picked the right decision in not running, I really couldn't tell you. What kind of a commander in chief do I think he would have been? While he stood behind presidents that were in place, what did he really do in his current position?
Well, I mean, when you look at it as Secretary of State, he oversaw the swift action following 9/11. I think that's one of the big reasons you brought that up as well. After
right, but that was his current position as a general.
Right. And
as Secretary of State, what was he doing?
And I mean, again, later on, he did criticize the Bush administration for their handling of Iraq, for example, something he got into, or he guided us into because he was the acting Secretary of State at the time, but something he was obviously really against. And he, it's come out in later years that he was championing the term, if you break it, you buy it, with Iraq, and hey, maybe this isn't worth the problems that it will incur here in later years. So I think really that's his lasting legacy. The guy wasn't afraid to pull the trigger when he felt it was necessary, but was he, I think that's the big legacy, is he was willing to pull the trigger when he felt necessary. Otherwise, it seems like he was kind of a little bit of a, hey, let's take a wait and see approach.
Wasn't a warmonger, but willing to fight.
Right, exactly. The interesting thing, though, that I also think about, you bring up an interesting point. Really, we know nothing about Colin's stances on domestic issues,
right.
LGBTQ issues, all of this stuff with the racial injustice and stuff. They were right in saying that he was very, very candid, and he would pick and choose where he stood. Obviously, he felt the need to step out and speak after the January 6th riots there at the Capitol. which actually I believe we're going to get to here in a little bit. We'll talk about that as well today. But talking about the January 6th riot, but finally, before we move on with Colin, obviously we found out since this video that he did die of COVID complications, but he also had a form of blood cancer as well, but he was fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Do you think this is going to move the narrative anywhere, or do you think they'll be respectful of obviously the Powell family and kind of keep him out of the debate there on
You're going to have people that are going to point to that no matter what. The fact that he was fully vaccinated and still died of COVID, they're going to leave out any fact that he had any other health problems.
right, right.
And then you're going to have the ones that are going to sit there and cling to it, saying, but he had other health problems. Right. So, no, I don't think that they're going to respectfully keep him out of it. Both sides use whatever they can to gain footholds where they can.
Absolutely.
I don't see that changing no matter who it is.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I look at Mr. Powell as a situation where, the guy had cancer, whether he was vaccinated or not, obviously just about anything would have eventually taken him down. So
right. And I believe you said that it was a form of blood cancer.
Correct.
And who knows how that really affects the body. We know that your white cell count and all of your healing abilities are in your blood. Mm-hmm. So, how much did that play into the complications?
Absolutely. Because of course they were very hesitant to say that he died of COVID. They said he died of COVID complications, which I mean,
right. So was it pneumonia,
cancer, or was it the COVID?
Right. And that's one of the things I brought up to you, that, okay, he had cancer. If it's foot cancer and he died of lung complications, then those two things don't really seem to fit. So yeah, you can say that was a non-issue. If it was lung cancer and he died of lung complications, yeah, there's a big correlation there. Right. The fact that it's blood, and blood is one of the things that help you fight off any kind of diseases, any kind of injuries, anything like that. I can definitely see that could have been an issue.
Right, and I mean they definitely said that he had a suppressed immune system. So
right,
definitely both. I think this is one of those cases where unfortunately the perfect storm came together, and Colin Powell passed away. Okay, moving on. The Southlake School District, a Southlake School District official has advised his teachers to include opposing views of the Holocaust in their curriculum. And we have a story here from NBC News on that.
We're NBC News exclusive. The new report in our series on a Texas school district at the center of a firestorm over diversity and inclusion efforts. Now, secretly recorded comments from a top administrator about books on the Holocaust are sparking new outrage. Antonia Hilton takes us back to Southlake.
Wes Frierson, a parent of two daughters in Southlake, is uncertain about his kids' education.
With some of the local politics right now, I'm not sure that teachers feel supported.
The district already in the spotlight after parents clashed over its diversity plan, now facing new pushback over which books are allowed in their libraries, with some teachers placing caution tape over bookshelves, calling the move censorship. It all started when a fourth grade teacher was reprimanded after a parent complained about her having a book about anti-racism.
I couldn't believe it. She's the kind of teacher that we would hope the district would be trying to attract.
The district sent educators new guidance to vet all books, instructing them to not allow singular perspectives that could be considered offensive. This coming after Texas passed a law banning the teaching of concepts that could make individuals feel guilt or anguish due to their race. NBC News obtained exclusive, secretly recorded audio of a school training.
We are in the middle of a political mess.
The director of curriculum, Gina Petty, offers an example for teachers. Balance books about the Holocaust with an opposing view.
Make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has other.
How do you oppose the Holocaust?
Gina Petty did not respond to messages requesting comment. I met with 2 concerned teachers in Southlake. We obscured their identities because they feared speaking out could cost them their jobs.
I was in such shock when I heard these words. We felt this was necessary because we felt like no one was going to listen until a teacher spoke up.
And it's not just in Southlake. Across the country, educators are facing new policies restricting how they can educate students about race, from Tennessee to Pennsylvania. Southlake School District told NBC News they were helping teachers comply with Texas law, and the district has not and will not mandate books be removed.
The district says that they have not told teachers to ban books, to completely shut down libraries. What are you seeing?
That's a lie. It is a flat-out lie. Like, how could you even make that statement?
What do you think is at stake here?
In books, children see what the world can be, and to have that taken away because we're afraid of a few parents getting upset about a word or two or an idea that they've imagined is in a book is unthinkable.
Wes Frierson says his daughters see what's happening.
But unfortunately, for kids of the age of mine, I think as they become aware of the world, I think they just see the world as very highly politicized.
But parents hope that politics find a way out of public schools. Antonia Hilton, NBC News, Southlake.
And you can hear more of our reporting on Southlake in our NBC News podcast. All episodes are now streaming.
So, Manny, I tell you, I don't understand this at all. I don't understand this fight. To use the Holocaust and then to say, well, if you teach from a book teaching about the Holocaust, you should balance it with an opposing view. So you're telling me that I should have balanced it out with somebody saying that the Holocaust was okay? You want me teaching Mein Kampf in the schoolroom? Like, this is where we are with this critical race theory. It's either too much or like there's no in between anymore. And this is, number one, I think they hit the nail on the head. I think that the classroom is being way overly politicized. Let's start there.
You want me to start there? Okay, I'll start
there.
The problem with today's people is this whole inclusion bullshit.
Okay.
Bottom line, everybody wants to have their view included into whatever's being said.
Right.
And you don't always need your view included into whatever's being said.
I agree.
Okay. School, mathematics will always be the same. There's no different views of that. Science is always going to be the same. The only time you're going to have changes there is with new discoveries. Okay. English, I before E is always going to be I before E, except after C. Right. Okay. Right. These things don't matter. It's whenever you start getting into the historical stuff that people start saying, oh, well, this needs to be taught. Oh, we don't need to teach that. So you start adding things in and taking things away, and then before you know it, nobody really knows the history of anything.
I mean, let's be honest here. At this point, history teachers are so handcuffed, and I think you'd agree, whether you support critical race theory or not, teachers are so handcuffed, they can't teach history because they don't know what to teach. They don't know whether they can tell people that African Americans were enslaved in this country. They don't know if the Holocaust, I mean...
Right. I mean, if we're going by that point, okay, if we start teaching, because they're saying that we need to include more African American history and what really happened. Okay, well, if we include more of that, now we're also being told that we have to share the other view too.
That's the problem, though. Like, the Holocaust, I think, is the perfect example of what the hell are you thinking? Like, she uses the Holocaust. What is the opposing view? Literally, the only thing I can think of is Mein Kampf But
I honestly think that she was just reaching for an example and didn't realize it was going to go there.
Right.
When you listen to her talking, as she's actually talking, she just reached up and grabbed an example. And it happened to be one that made her look really stupid and really bad.
Right, right. Do you think we're going to get to a point where not necessarily we can please everybody, but we can find a happy medium where, because I do think it is important to acknowledge the origins of this country and, you know, parts of critical race theory. I also think it's important to teach everything else that is history right now as we know it. We don't need a radical overhaul of the history system, in my opinion. Maybe add in some certain things that we've learned since then, just like science. We talked about that earlier. Maybe pepper in some of those things that we've learned since then. But I feel like everybody's looking at this as we need to completely overhaul the history curriculum, when really, once again, all we're talking about is adding in, hey, yeah, we had this Jim Crow era where, you know, African Americans were treated terribly. We had this, you know, enslavement area where it wasn't just about the time for the Civil War. It was, you know, a whole amount of time, which, of course, off the top of my head, I can't quote how long slavery lasted in this country. But you know what I mean? Like, why not just pepper in those facts? Why are we looking at this as we need to completely overhaul the?
Because you get things like, you know, Columbus Day and how great Christopher Columbus was in discovering America and all of that. Well, the other side of that is he didn't discover America. He came upon a land that was already its own country, different nations and stuff like that.
But I mean, that's the thing. We know this as facts. So why are people not wanting to teach that now? Why are people not wanting to teach that Christopher Columbus actually discovered Puerto Rico? Which, I mean, once again, if I ever discovered anything, I don't care whether it's a little mass of islands in the middle of the ocean. It'd be cool to be like, hey, I discovered this shit. Whether it be
but
America.
Did you discover it? If there was already people living there, is that actually your discovery?
Ooh, good point. Valid point.
That's the deal.
Valid.
Because you've got people that say Christopher Columbus discovered America. No, he discovered what was already an inhabited place.
Right, exactly.
So he didn't discover it. He came upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference.
Absolutely agree with that. And actually,
as far as will we ever get to like one teaching? No, I don't think we ever will. I think there's always going to be arguments. You're going to have, in my opinion, what you will have are a bunch of people that are privately schooled.
Am I just so young that I don't? So this is the first time that I remember something on this scale. Like literally, like I said, it feels like they're trying to just completely overhaul the history curriculum. Is this the first time that you can remember that this has happened, or has this been ongoing for a while?
No, this is the first I can remember anything like this happening. And it's not, I mean, you have to look at all kinds of things. It's not just, right now it's history. But prior to this, it was the Common Core stuff.
True.
That they were trying to change. There's always people that are saying, oh, here's a better way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was nothing wrong with the way it was happening before.
Right. Again, here's the thing. There is nothing wrong with our current history curriculum. It's just, hey, minor adjustments, minor tweaks. Let's add in this. Let's add in that. And cool, we're good. Nice. People go to college to make these decisions. Let them make these decisions.
Right. And at the end of the day, when you're going through school, the most important years of school are 9th through 12th grade.
I would agree.
That is what counts. So up until 9th grade, I think that we need to teach an overall general view of your history and your sciences and your mathematics and your English. Okay, get them up to a certain point. Figure out what really needs to be taught. Mm-hmm. And then in your 9th through 12th grade year, let them focus on what they're really interested in those things. so that they can take that on into college. I don't understand why college goers have to have so many credits in other things other than what the field they're trying to get into.
Right.
If they're majoring in this field, those are the things that they should be going for. But your colleges still mandate that they have other classes just because they mandate it. I don't understand the reasoning.
Well, and you actually bring up something interesting about the 9th through 12th grade. Another thing I would think is, hey, let's open up let's teach them everything we know up until 9th grade. From 9th through 12th grade, at that point, you start getting into those, being able to have some mature discussions.
Let them start specializing in certain types.
Right. Why not have those discussions? Why not say, okay, here's where we are with slavery, y'all. What do y'all think? Learning everything we've taught you so far. What's your thoughts? And let them start building those critical thinking skills that they're going to need in college and in the real world. Just saying, we're too low on the totem pole workers here in Arkansas, and I'm just saying we came up with the way to fix the world. Definitely something to keep your eye on, though, because this Southlake School District has been in the news quite a bit here in Texas. So definitely. And this is not the last time, hint, we're going to talk about Texas tonight.
Well, and this is not the last time we're going to talk about schools. My AI may be the way to go. So.
Okay, I definitely could see that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. The Moderna COVID-19 shot has been suspended in Sweden. Another little piece of ammo for our anti-vaxxers out there. Here we go. We have the story from Yahoo Finance.
All right, Adam, let's turn to the pandemic because we have some recent headlines that we want to get to. Moderna is actually another stock that's on the move today with shares off just around 8%. We got some headlines overseas out of Sweden. Sweden has suspended the Moderna vaccine for those under the age of 30. Now, we want to bring in Dr. Anand Swaminathan. He's an emergency medicine physician in New Jersey. And Dr. Swaminathan, it's good to see you again. So health officials over in Sweden saying that this move was out of an abundance of caution. But I know that there's a lot of people listening who either got the Moderna vaccine and they're under the age of 30 or know someone who has that is under the age of 30. Put this in perspective for us. I guess, how worried, how concerned should that group be?
I wouldn't be too worried. When we see big time side effects pop up, it usually pops up very soon after getting the vaccine. If you've already been vaccinated with Moderna, I wouldn't worry too much. And we have good data that Moderna is highly protected, even 4, 5, 6 months out of vaccination. So I don't think it's anything to worry too much about. Let's see what more data comes over the next week or so.
Doctor, where do you think, just from what you're seeing on the ground, we really are in this pandemic? Because when we look at the one from 1918, it eventually goes away on its own. We have vaccines, and then we have the natural reaction to it. So what's your trajectory for this thing?
I think this is really hard to say because we have been surprised by coronavirus every step along the way. Every time it seems to fade, it seems to rage back. It seems to rage back even worse. It's great to see that we are in a little bit of a downswing, but we have to remember that that downswing is regional. And there are regions of the country that are still surging, especially places like Montana and Alaska, North Dakota, where cases are continuing to rise, hospitalizations are continuing to rise, and the hospital system is continuing to have a breakdown. It's hard to say exactly where we're going to be, but I suspect that we will continue to see surges until we get our vaccination rates considerably higher than they are right now.
And speaking of the number of cases climbing in certain parts of the country, of course, people are going to get a booster shot in order to try and help, I guess, prevent them from getting the virus. But just talk to us about how the booster shot debate has played out over the last month or so, because there's been conflicting signals coming from the administration and then from the CDC and the FDA. And now we have the headlines today that the FDA is examining data on mixing and matching boosters. So help us make sense of what we have heard and what we should know going forward.
The booster discussion really has been a little bit convoluted. What we have to remember is that the primary series of vaccines, whether it's 2 Moderna, 2 Pfizer, or even one J&J continue to be extremely protective against hospitalization even 5 to 6 months out. We have a ton of data saying that that rate, that efficacy is still in the 80+% range. What we do see, though, is a fall in the efficacy against any infection. So a larger number of people are getting breakthrough infections, but those are minor infections that people get over. The booster, the idea is it boosts your antibodies. It makes it less likely that you get a breakthrough infection. We don't have a ton of data telling us that. We can see for boosters that there is a group that clearly can benefit, the over 65 age group, those that are immunosuppressed. Those groups, I think a booster makes a lot of sense. A booster for everybody really doesn't make sense right now. And the mix and match data that we're going to see, that's going to be really interesting because we might find out, I got 2 Pfizers. The best booster for me might be a J&J. That might actually give me more robust long-term protection. So we still need to see how all of the booster data pans out. That mix and match, I think we're going to be particularly curious to know not just whether a booster helps, but which booster and which one can give us, or which combination can give us the longest lasting immunity.
There's also the news that AstraZeneca is asking the FDA for authorization to use its COVID antibody treatment. What are we seeing in hospitals across the nation about the treatments we didn't have a year ago and the way their efficacy, they don't prevent disease, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Do they cure? What do we really know about it?
Well, Adam, I think your point that these are not preventive is the biggest thing to understand. The vaccine is the best thing we can do to prevent getting COVID. All of the therapeutics that we have at this point, with the exception of steroids when you're already very sick, have marginal benefits at best. And we see these monoclonal antibodies, things like the AstraZeneca drug that's going to be coming out or they're seeking approval for, they have marginal benefits on this pandemic, but a huge amount of resources, both financial as well as logistical resources, that goes into getting these drugs to people. They're not going to be the solution, whether it be the Merck drug that's going to be put out in the next couple of months, whether it be the AstraZeneca monoclonal antibodies, whether it be the Regeneron monoclonal antibodies. This is not going to fix the pandemic. What we should be doing is taking the billions of dollars that we're paying for these agents and sinking it into public health infrastructure, into welfare programs to support people. And that's the best way that we not only get out of this pandemic, but we also prevent the next pandemic from coming. The high-tech, high-expense solutions, that's not going to be the fix.
Doctor, always great to speak with you. Dr. Anand Swaminathan, emergency medicine physician. We look forward to having you back on the program soon.
So, Manny, some interesting things he brought up there. The first guy that I remember actually saying, hey, these boosters, maybe not. Obviously we've heard rumbles. We've heard Fauci say that, hey, they may not necessarily be needed for, those that are old or younger in age, and then the older ones, obviously with the compromised immune system, may need those boosters to continue the long lasting effects. He brought some interesting things up though, or some things that I found interesting. He seems to say that we're still in an upswing. So I want to start there. Do you believe that we are still, as a country, in an upswing? Because what I'm seeing, and, I think I've even said this a couple times in our chat there on Facebook, is shockingly, I see Arkansas schools now that were fighting for mask mandates at the beginning of the year saying, okay, we're to a spot where we can start relaxing everything. Like, obviously, what we're doing now is working. Lord knows what's going to happen 6 months down the road. But what we're looking at right now, it's working. Am I wrong on that? Are you seeing
You'll have to preface that with, he said some areas, different areas are reacting differently. And in all honesty, I started toning out about the time that I continuously heard the way he was telling everybody, we don't know what's happening. And every other word other than those exact words, he really had no true information.
Right.
His bottom line was, we have to wait and see what's happening. The funny things that I thought he said was that when there's problems with this kind of stuff, they happen quickly. Okay, yet Prilosec, OTC, the cancer that causes, that wasn't quick.
Right.
It wasn't like right off that they were finding out, hey, this is cancer causing. The hernia mesh, it wasn't very quick that they were finding out there's issues with that. Even the freaking earplugs for the military.
Yeah.
It wasn't immediate that they knew issues were there.
Agent Orange.
Yeah. So I felt it cracked me up whenever he said when there's issues, it tends to happen quickly.
Right. And, actually, when I got my first COVID vaccine, that's what I talked to the Walgreens physician about. I was like, hey, man, if I were to have an adverse reaction, what is this going to, what are we looking at? And he said, typically, and I'm assuming this is what this gentleman was talking about. He said, typically, the reason why, and they have you wait there 15 minutes. He said, typically, if you're going to have that adverse reaction, that had been killing people at the time, it's going to happen pretty quick. Within 15 minutes, you're going to start swelling up or what have you. So I'm assuming that is what he meant by that. It's the same thing that pharmacist was talking about. But you're right. I mean, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, we may very well hear, if you got the COVID-19 vaccine late at night on a infomercial. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, and we've mentioned and joked about that before, that I really believe that we will be hearing those kind of things.
And we may very well. What do you think about what he said? Obviously, you mentioned that he didn't provide very much information, which I would agree. What do you think about what he said about the immunocompromised individuals, the people with the lower immune systems, especially knowing what we talked about at the top of the show with Colin Powell being fully vaccinated? He was immunocompromised, and, COVID still unfortunately ended his life.
I think we've been sold a bill of goods, honestly. Before it was, this will stop COVID, and then when it didn't, this will deter COVID. And now that it hasn't, they're looking for the next line to start repeating.
Right. And here's the thing. I think we say this every show, or at least I do. If they wouldn't speak in exacts, if they would just come out and say, hey, guys, here's where we are right now. Here's what we believe will work. I feel like we'd be able to take that a little bit better than, this is how it's going to be. This is what's working. This is going to work. I don't care what it says 6 months down the road. We're just focused on the now, and this is what's working now. I feel like people...
Right, and I think that's a big issue, them trying to do it that way. Because it doesn't give them time to really look at anything. The fact that this has FDA approval, all they've really found out is it doesn't kill you right now.
Right.
They really have no grasp on anything else.
And you said something, you said you heard the key points, but I don't know if you missed this, but he even said as much in the beginning. He said, we don't, COVID surprised us throughout this process. What we know now may be different, in 6 months,
right.
The lulls and back up. He basically said exactly what I'm telling you. This is something we still don't know everything about. So what we know now could very well be different in 6 months. And you can't, as a scientist, I feel like you shouldn't be speaking knowing that you don't know everything about this. You should know better than to speak in absolutes.
Right.
Technically, right now, this would be what you would consider, I guess, a theory or a hypothesis.
The hypothesis,
and now you're working your way through it. Lord knows COVID may change, and we may be getting a Lord knows what variant we're on right now, but we'll call it a Zulu variant that comes through and just completely changes everything we know about COVID.
Right.
That's where we are. The thing is, I think this is twofold. Number one, the government needs to stop speaking in absolutes. Number two, I think that everybody in America, everybody in the world needs to take a step back and realize things are going to change. Things are absolutely going to change. What we know now will be different in a few months, possibly. We need to take what we know with a grain of, hey, this is what's going on right now. We recommend this, but if you don't want to get a COVID-19 vaccine, who knows? In 6 months, it may be different. Why do you think it's the same approach, really, that they go with the flu shot? They give out a new flu shot every year because the flu changes every year.
Right.
That's the approach they need to come out with, in my mind, for COVID. We've talked about this before, how COVID is, basically a flu.
Right.
Take the same approach.
Right. And they need to stop mandating things, using scare tactics to try to get people to take these vaccines. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Again, we are seeing an increase in people getting vaccinated, but at the same time, we're seeing a decrease in people wearing masks at schools. This thought that, and I'm going to sit here and die on my cross for this one, because you can roast me on this, Manny. I was the one that was sitting there yelling, we have to have masks at the beginning of school, otherwise there's going to be this big surge.
How big was the surge?
3 months in, we got masks. We somewhat got masks, basically it was up to the parent. 3 months in, no big surge.
Right.
I mean, I'll die on that one for you. I'll eat my crow on that one, because I was wrong. And again, that's something else that, as much as I like Dr. Fauci and think he's doing as good a job as he could, possibly as anybody could in a job, he's in a no-win position in my mind.
Right.
He can't win. He as good a job as what I think he's just bad at saying, hey man, I was wrong, things change.
Right.
And I think that's why he's looked upon so unfavorably right now, is because of his inability to come out and say, you know what, we were wrong, this is something brand new, we're still learning about it, so I apologize.
Yeah.
He's unwilling to do that. Okay, so moving on. What do you think this does, though? Before we move on, what do you think this does to the? Do you look at this and what I'm considering really a downswing? Obviously, we're heading into the winter. Do you think? Where do you think this moves everything? Do you think we're truly seeing that these vaccines are ineffective? Are we seeing that the numbers are going down because the vaccine is getting in more arms, or do you think it's kind of a combination of both? People are getting this natural immunity, and people are getting the vaccine.
I don't think that it's ineffective. The problem I have with it is there's not enough information on what all it does. I do think that it keeps COVID symptoms down. It doesn't keep you from catching it, and it definitely doesn't eradicate it.
Right.
But it seems to keep the symptoms down. So I'm not going to say that it's ineffective. What I will say is that it doesn't seem to be everything they hyped it up to be.
Right.
As far as the immunity seems to go, I'm honestly of the opinion that more of it is herd immunity than the vaccine.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing, even a year ago, I believe it was, we were being told, hey, if you catch it, we want you to come into the hospital and give it your antibodies, because you're, not immune, but, basically they told us we were immune if we caught it. Cool.
Until that didn't work for them anymore. Then all of a sudden you needed the vaccine, even if you've had it before, because the vaccine was better than the regular immunity.
Right.
Regular antibodies. But then you had other reports that were saying, no, the antibodies that you get if you've had it before are actually better than the vaccine. So that goes back to what you were saying with everybody's giving you certains, but nobody knows.
Right. Exactly. He said, one more thing real quick that just occurred to me. He said that the vaccine's effectiveness goes down to about 80% after 6 months. And you're really recommending and pushing without the FDA's approval for this booster shot at 6 months. Pretty sure I would think that you would need a booster if it drops below, say, maybe 70, 75%. Why are we wanting?
But then you got to be looking at how many boosters at that point. Every 6 months, you need a booster?
Yeah, am I getting a shot every 6 months for the rest of my life? I mean, come on now, bro. And then, oh yeah, we may mix and match boosters. Like, bro, I'm not touching anything but the one I got.
Right.
That's the only one I trust, and it's a hesitant trust, even with
right. If anything, in my opinion, because that's all I can give you, this should show how much this country needs to have medical professionals working together, pharmacists working together. These companies that want to keep things for themselves, when it comes to the medical part of it, we don't need to keep things to ourselves. Can you imagine what surgeries and stuff would be like if doctors that discovered new ways of doing things kept that to themselves?
Right.
There's a lot of procedures that would not be able to be done by anybody else because that doctor kept his a secret. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, when it comes to health, we don't need to hide what we've got. I understand a capitalist society. I am in full favor of a capitalist society. But when it comes to your health and medical procedures and pharmaceuticals, stuff like that, that kind of stuff needs to be shared and looked at among several people.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed there.
If you make a better mousetrap, by all means, put your copyright on it, get your trademark or whatever. Definitely make that yours. But when we're talking about medicines and procedures to save people's lives, we've got to share information.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. Okay, while we're talking about another common theme of things we talk about on this show, the police. The FBI has raided the home of the NYPD union chief, and we have a story here from NBC News.
Ed Mullins leaving his house not saying anything to reporters. Uncharacteristic behavior for the normally outspoken NYPD union leader. Mullins is the head of the Sergeants Benevolent Association. Tonight he finds himself the target of a federal investigation. Today, at least 8 FBI agents searched the Lower Manhattan headquarters of the SBA, removing boxes of evidence after spending several hours inside. They also searched Mullins' Port Washington home at daybreak.
I firmly believe, as the men and women in the NYPD.
Mullins is known for clashing with city officials. He's in the middle of department disciplinary hearings for tweeting NYPD arrest papers of Mayor Bill de Blasio's daughter during the George Floyd protests.
The fact that this search warrant was executed by the FBI says that whatever prompted the belief that crimes have been committed occurred at the federal level and is not related to local politics.
While the FBI would not elaborate on the investigation, former federal investigator Wason Dunn believes Mullins is the target.
To get a search warrant, you have to be able to articulate what specific crimes you think have occurred. And then more importantly, you have to be able to articulate why you believe that the place to be searched has evidence of those crimes.
Thanks for watching our YouTube.
So let's talk about this, Manny. The NYPD.
Wait. Is that how that works? You have to have an articulable suspicion,
right?
In order to get a warrant? You mean you can't just go kicking people's doors in and shooting them in the head?
I mean. But no, I mean, this straight up comes out of like a 1930s mobster movie. The NYPD union chief is.
Wait.
The cold.
The New York Police Department is crooked?
What?
No, not in America.
By the way, I would also like to point out this guy. in the middle of the Floyd protest, decides to throw Bill de Blasio on blast. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I keep interrupting you.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Yeah, that's the whole thing in a nutshell for me is they took their time. They combed over everything that they felt they needed to and had enough evidence to get a warrant signed.
Sounds like it's the way the police system should work.
So I'm curious, I'm waiting for them to actually drop the information. What was it they found? What is it that they're going after? So
in that whole 2-minute spiel, we didn't learn what the hell he did.
Because that has not been disclosed yet.
We just know that there's 2 FBI officers walking out with 2 big ass boxes of stuff.
There was enough information for them to go into the house. Once they were in the house, they found enough stuff to fill 2 boxes.
Right.
So I'm curious at how many things they did wrong.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So definitely something we're going to want to keep our eye on. This next one here. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has claimed that President Biden has abandoned everyone who lives on the border. And we actually have the interview from Fox News here.
We traveled to the Texas border last week for the 3rd time in the last 2 years, and I was able to see firsthand how this crisis has expanded throughout Texas, from El Paso to McAllen to Del Rio. Now border agents tell me migrants are expanding into Arizona. Watch.
Just between September 19th and September 25th, we had over 5,000 arrests, 5,400 arrests in a very small sector. This isn't a large area.
He's referring to Yuma, Arizona. Joining me right now, the man who is fighting to stop this surge, Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Governor, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being
Maria,
here. Before we get to what your administration is doing to stop all of this, assess where we are. Are you seeing this crisis expand beyond what we saw a year ago?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, a year ago, of course, was still during the Trump administration, and the Trump administration had put in place all the policies that led to the greatest reduction in cross-border crossings. But now we're seeing the highest number of cross-border crossings, and it's all because of the catastrophic open border policies by the Biden administration, and we're seeing more and more people come in. But I got to tell you, Maria, there is something that's happening that's getting even worse, and that is the cartels are getting even more aggressive. And the cartels on the Mexican side of the border, they're beginning to open fire on the National Guard that the Texas has down on the border to secure the border. This is escalating into a firing war on each side of the border, where Texas and our National Guard are having to defend themselves and defend the state of Texas.
So just to be clear, we were in Del Rio. You say it's getting worse. In other areas of Texas then?
Sure. So everybody saw what happened in Del Rio with regard to the Haitians that came in there. But right now, the hottest point is in Roma, Texas, in Starr County area. And that's the area where the cartels on the Mexican side of the border are shooting at the National Guard on the Texas side of the border. And so what Texas is having to do, we're having to step up and guard multiple points across the entire border.
Unbelievable. And I know these Mexican cartels are very smart. They know how to flood one area so it opens up another area so that they can get through smuggling humans and drugs across. We've got new unofficial numbers from one of our border sources. It says that in the last month, we saw 187,000 apprehensions. But of course, the number of gotaways is much higher, 42,649 gotaways. 91 people died in the U.S. in the desert. What do you want to say about these gotaways? We just heard from 2 ranchers that said they're watching their property damage every day. They have to carry their gun everywhere they go, including to throw away the trash.
Well, listen, those ranchers were spot on in their assessment, and that is the Biden administration has completely abandoned those ranchers. The Biden administration has completely abandoned all the people who live on the border, and they have abandoned people in the state of Texas. And Maria, these are counties, and these are people who traditionally have voted Democrat that the Biden administration is ignoring, and he's putting them in danger. And you heard that rancher talk about the need to carry a gun. Remember, Biden said there was no need for anybody ever to have a gun of more than 6 bullets or 6 rounds, whatever the case may be. These are people who need the firepower to be able to deal with the cartels who may be coming across the border. And so this is exactly why people need their Second Amendment rights to protect their own safety and defend themselves on the border. But this is also exactly why Texas is stepping up to do more than any state has ever done to help to secure this region so that we can help ranchers like that. It's why Texas has devoted more than $3 billion to secure the border. It's why we have the National Guard and the Texas Department of Public Safety on the border. It's why Texas itself is building a border wall to make sure that we will be able to better secure our border.
Well, how can you do that? I mean, you're doing that just on state land, I know, because the Biden administration last week said that it's canceling all the remaining border wall construction contracts in that area. So I was there witnessing walls that were half done and the other half is wide open. I mean, it's quite easy to just get out of, come in from the Rio Grande, jump over and get in a getaway car. And I just want to point out that we understand another thing that I learned last week is that these getaway cars are being driven by Americans. So the cartels are advertising their services on TikTok and Snapchat, I'm told. So look at this graphic where we show cartels are charging the migrants from the Northern Triangle $8,000 to $10,000. But then they're paying American citizens $1,000 to be that getaway car. 90% of the cars stopped with illegals in them are actually driven by Americans. What can you tell us about this?
Well, first of all, it's true. Second, is something that the Texas Department of Public Safety has been working on, and we just made it far easier for the Texas Department of Public Safety to both arrest and be able to prosecute these people who are assisting in smuggling. This is an accomplice to a felony in the state of Texas. And so I signed a new law that makes it easier to crack down on smugglers in the state of Texas. And we are going after these people who are responding to these TikTok requests, who are assisting the cartels in smuggling people in the United States. That is a crime, and we are looking to put these people behind bars.
Just extraordinary. Governor, I want to switch gears and ask you before you go about these vaccine mandates. Texas.
Okay, obviously that part doesn't matter, but I have to say, first off, he painted a pretty picture about the farmers on the border needing to carry guns because of these cartels. I think that he is grossly overstating how many of these people that they may come in contact with are part of a cartel. Come on now, bro. I'm sure not many of these people are the cartels. The cartels may be funding these people to get across the border, but I don't think it's the cartels that are actually, help getting these people across the border. I think he is grossly overstating the amount of danger the average everyday American is in living on the Texas border, running into one of these Mexican cartel members.
And I didn't hear it that way. The way I heard it was that you've got these ranchers that are having damage done to their property.
Mm-hmm.
So they go out there and have to carry a weapon with them because they don't know what they're going to run into.
Right.
Wasn't saying that everybody out there was a cartel member, but saying that on a nightly basis, their property is being damaged. So I'm looking at, fences probably being cut so that migrants can make their way through in a straight line instead of going around people's property, stuff like that. But I mean, if you come across a couple of guys that think you're going to do something to them, how do you know they're not going to do something to you?
True.
So I can understand where they feel the need to carry a firearm or some kind of protection with them because they don't know what they're going to come up against whenever they go to check their property.
Right. What do you think? So I'm kind of interested because I'm not so sure that I disagree in the terminology he used about President Biden, quote unquote, abandoning those who live on the border. I'm not so sure that that isn't correct, in that President Biden has done absolutely nothing since we've been here about fixing this border situation.
Sure he has. You don't remember? He appointed Kamala Harris.
Oh, well, touche. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Vice President Harris has done absolutely nothing about this border situation.
She did. She went and visited.
Where the fuck did she visit?
Was,
it wasn't
like somewhere way north, nowhere near the border.
2 hours north. But neither of them have really done anything meaningful, whether it be, passing legislation for a pathway to citizenship or anything. They have literally done nothing. Like there's nothing sitting in the halls of Congress. There's nothing on anybody's desk right now that I know of pertaining to illegal immigration. I understand we have COVID, but guess what? We are starting to get COVID under control. You can't use COVID for 4 years of inaction.
Right.
The excuse
right.
of, hey, I'm
especially when we don't know, the health of the people coming into this country.
Right.
How do we know that they don't have COVID and now they're bringing it in and spreading it along?
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you using that excuse, okay, it played fine maybe the first 6 months. Now we're to the point where I'm like, bro, like, you have to do something. Like, give me something to feel good about. And he's not. Like, I legitimately sit here and wonder what President Biden is doing besides ordering drone strikes that fucking kill innocent people, which we'll get to in just a moment.
He's trying to ensure that the Republicans win next election.
I mean, he must be, because legitimately, like, he's going to take a bath in 1 year in these midterm elections if he does not change something. The Democratic Party is going to be screwed. I mean, let's be honest, no midterm election looms well for the Democratic Party, but Congress has done nothing.
I'll tell you what is more concerning to me is these cartels that are firing into the United States.
That was interesting to me. He mentioned that.
When we were over in Iraq, if the enemy would have fired into American occupied territory, what would have happened?
It would have definitely been answered with the full force of the military.
Why is it not being done the same way here? Why are we not considering that an act of aggression or an act of war and actually mobilizing against Mexico? I bet you a lot of the Mexican government would try to pull that cartel back.
Here's the thing with this, too. You mentioned that, and I actually just thought about a President Bush quote from the War on Terror. He said, "We will make no distinction between a person that is acting on their own and the government that is harboring them." I know it's been 20 years now, but are we making a distinction between the cartels and the Mexican government? And should we be making that distinction? I'm not saying let's go on a full ground war against Mexico, by the way. So don't get me wrong there.
I am.
I mean, I'm not here for let's go get in another war, but because
this one's closer to home.
Again, Colin. Old Colin Powell is right in saying if we break it, we buy it. Well, there's a lot of Mexico that's broken that we would have to, try to fix. But
that isn't us breaking it. They're the ones that are firing into the United States.
True. I mean, at least I'm surprised that, like, Governor Abbott, you have the authority. I put some of this on Governor Abbott. You have the authority. Why are you not directing the National Guard to, engage these individuals that are firing upon you?
Yeah.
Definitely, though. Again, the tensions keep mounting, and this is a guy who a lot of Republicans are looking at to challenge Joe Biden in another 3 years. Joe, you have 3 years. You've already wasted one. You better get on it. That's all I can say about that. And finally, for tonight, before we get to our American Idiot of the week, the U.S. is vowing to pay relatives of Afghans killed in that inadvertent drone strike. We have a story about those Afghan relatives from the Los Angeles Times.
Right now, I feel very concerned about that. When I saw this area, I'm so angry. I'm so sad because I lost a member of my family, include of my big brother and include of my daughter. I'm very feel sad today. Feel very bad that because that the youth should contact with us, that they should reach on us, that because we have a lot of problem, they should contact with me. And I want to say some things for them. We have a lot of problem, and the life is very difficult for us because I lost my big brother. He was the breadwinner of our family, and now I'm jobless. My brothers are jobless. We have a lot of problems that they should assist us and solve our problem. Yeah, you can.
Can come? Okay.
Yeah, come on. This is my big brother. My big brother built this keyboard.
Himself? He built it himself?
Yeah. My brother, my big brother, made this cupboard.
And has anybody from the U.S. government reached out to you?
No, it is still no government reaching here, and no one's contact with me. Just only they apologized for TV and media. No one's contact with me. It is still.
And how does that make you feel?
I feel very bad.
Good afternoon. I'm here to brief the results of the investigation I directed following the report of civilian casualties from our strike in Kabul on 29 August. Having thoroughly reviewed the findings of the investigation and the supporting analysis by interagency partners, I am now convinced that as many as 10 civilians, including up to 7 children, were tragically killed in that strike. Moreover, we now assess that it is unlikely that the vehicle and those who died were associated with ISIS-K or were a direct threat to U.S. forces. I offer my profound condolences to the family and friends of those who were killed. This strike was taken in the earnest belief that it would prevent an imminent threat to our forces and the evacuees at the airport. But it was a mistake, and I offer my sincere apology.
What's next for you? What are your plans?
Yeah, we live in a country that we don't know, we can't get any decision about the future. We don't have any plan for future. Just only every day I'm feeling like that, how should I do? How can we solve our problem? That because in Afghanistan, we know better that all the people, majority people of Afghanistan are jobless. We don't get any decision about the future. It's not clear for us.
A very hard video for me to watch, Manny. Here's the big thing that I'm looking at. We're going to pay these people. That's perfectly fine and absolutely acceptable. But the fact that the commander in chief, fuck the general who couldn't pick up a phone, but the commander in chief of this country, the president of the United States, when he made a mistake, can call that family himself personally and make sure that they know that, at least offer condolences, prayers, what have you. It's sickening to me, Manny. Like, there's no excuse to me. What's money gonna do? Like, honestly, yes, pay them, but what's money gonna do? You could at least have the common courtesy to do that.
We've gone back and forth a lot about what the president should do, what the president shouldn't do in different instances. We've talked a lot about the president does not have time to handle all these little things. That's why he has a cabinet. That's why he has people in place to do that. So the fact that the president of the United States wasn't the one that picked up the phone and called anybody, I'm not going to lay that blame at him. This happened how long ago?
A month.
Okay. It's been 4 weeks.
Right.
They ought to be happy that in the 4 weeks, the data has been looked at enough to come up with an opinion of this was our fault.
So I then asked, do you think anybody, even the general, who just like sent him a video of like a press conference or whatever you want to call it, whatever that video you want to call that was.
And this, when we're looking at stuff like this, you have to remember this has been edited for us to see. Right. So we don't even know how they received it. You know, did somebody bring in a laptop and open it up to play this video for them? Were they all called to one place and this video played for them en masse? You know, we're not sure exactly how they got this information. So now finish your thoughts. Sorry.
Do you feel like at least that gentleman who was speaking in the video, his name escapes me, he's a general, obviously. Do you feel like he should have picked up the phone? Somebody? I feel like that personal touch.
There should have been somebody, yes, in a position to actually talk to them face to face, actually, not just sending videos. Right. But again, you have to look at where it is. It's a war zone.
Right.
So if we send somebody over there to apologize face to face, is there a guarantee that we can get those people back out?
That's true.
But that's what this whole bombing was originally over.
Especially considering the fact that, I mean, to be fair, ISIL did bomb a mosque, I believe, in southern Afghanistan this week. So, I mean, that's a valid point. Obviously, I'm on board with paying these relatives. Obviously, money isn't going to mean much. But in the grand scheme
it may mean something to them, but then you have to think, is ISIL on these people? Hey, if the U.S. government sends you something, we need you to direct that money over here.
That's a good point, too. You know, I was sitting there watching this, and I thought back to watching that show I told you about on Hulu, The Looming Tower, and the lead up to 9/11. And I was just sitting there thinking, man, in certain cases, some of these people weren't born, you know, evil like Osama bin Laden. But it's things like this that turned these people against Americans. The gentleman that they interviewed obviously didn't seem to have been radicalized by this situation. But I mean, if somebody gets in his ear, it's hard for me to sit there and tell them, you're doing the wrong thing. America's good, you know, based upon.
Right. And if we look at Osama bin Laden, was he radicalized prior to him showing he was radicalized?
That's a good point.
How long did he put on the good face of I'm no threat and get things that he wanted?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. I mean, hell, we helped him try to run out the USSR in the 80s. They were our best friends.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, as long as we was giving them weapons.
So are you on board with the reparations to these families, though? Do you think that's the right way to go about this?
It's hard to say. I mean, something should be done. Yes, I don't want to seem cold and heartless, but you don't know whose pocket these people may be in. I mean, they may not be in.
Right.
But you don't know. And that's where I land on it. You don't know.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. And navigating this is definitely tricky, as is any foreign policy issue. I don't want to discount that. I see your point as far as the president.
I mean, it's a bad deal. We bombed a car in Afghanistan that killed 10 people.
Yeah, 7 children.
Okay.
Yeah.
10 people. We're sorry. It was a mistake. How many Afghans were on the flights that brought down 2 towers?
You're right. I believe
I mean,
a sizable amount, actually, besides the terror.
Did we get a video apology from the Afghan government?
Well, I mean, the Afghan government at that point was the Taliban, and we kind of fucked them up. So, I mean, I don't think they were offering any apology anytime soon, if you know what I mean.
But you see my point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, y'all, let's finish things out here. American Idiot of the Week. This week, my American Idiot of the Week will be the great American President Joe Biden. I'm going to go after him, though. I do believe that while Governor Abbott's claims were quite strong, I believe he did paint a picture and, played a little bit of politics in that interview. The essence of what he was saying was correct. His border policy and his domestic policy has been nothing short of an utter failure in my mind. Things have gone from bad to absolutely catastrophic at the border, and it needs to be dealt with like priority numero uno. Maybe 2. COVID, okay, can take a priority, but you need to be looking at this, and this needs to be a daily situation for me. So that's where I am with the president. He is my American Idiot of the Week.
Nice. I alluded to school issue with mine. My American Idiot of the Week is Victoria Weiss.
Okay.
Have you heard of her?
Name sounds familiar, but not sure.
Hey, let me tell you about this gem of a teacher.
Oh, Lord.
South Carolina elementary teacher who decided that she was going to put marijuana edibles in her reward box for her classroom.
You're lying. Hold on. No. Was it intentional? Did she know she put her edibles in that?
I didn't see that she was defending herself, saying, I didn't realize I put those in there. But even still, in South Carolina, that is illegal to own.
Yeah.
So maybe she was just thinking that would be a good stash spot and forgot about them.
Woo.
But
did the kids
bringing your marijuana edibles to school with you,
right,
is an idiot move in its own.
Did the kids get into them, or did they catch it before the kids got into it?
I didn't get to read that far into it. The headline alone caught me, and I read enough to get her name. I was really looking for what grade she taught, but they didn't even give that information. So yeah, I encourage anybody to go look up her name. Maybe they can get more information on it. But yeah, just the fact that a child actually got it out of the reward box and was caught with it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, definitely Idiot of the Week material right there. Well, Manny, that's pretty much all we got this week. Is there anything else you want to discuss before we get out of here?
Not that I can think of.
Awesome. Y'all go to SCW. I keep wanting to call it SEW for whatever reason. Y'all go if
South Central Wrestling.
If you're in the Central Arkansas or the South area, if you're in this area.
Even if you're not, come to this area. We've got Al Snow appearing this weekend.
Absolutely. What is that? South
Central Wrestling. You can look at SouthCentralWrestling.com, SCW Arkansas on YouTube, and South Central Wrestling on Facebook.
Absolutely. Well, we will see you guys next week. We'll be on Tuesdays again, or on Tuesday again next week, and then we'll move back to our normal Monday slot. But we will see you guys next week with more American Idiots. Good night, everybody.